Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself. My name is Kevin McNulty. I'm your host. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I've got another interesting topic. It's one that I've spoken on other episodes about, I guess you could say, in terms of emotional intelligence. But my guest is going to talk to us about emotional leadership. So there's a very interesting twist on this whole idea that it's been around a while, but it still seems to have some cutting edge to it. So we're going to talk about how we sometimes talk ourselves out of our emotions. But my guest suggests that, emotions really don't work that way. And I have to admit, I've done the same thing. If I'm upset about something and I want to get over it, I literally try to rationalize or talk myself out of it. My guest says that's not the way that it works. So the question becomes, well, how does that work? And then we're going to talk about a program or a technique that she has. She calls it the rapid anger release system. And so as a way of dealing with your emotions and so forth. So Dr. Marlis Huebner is an emotional leadership coach and an R&D director at a Fortune 50 company. Dr. Huebner is on a mission to redefine working motherhood and help ambitious moms create happy families while smashing the ceiling in their careers as a confident woman who leads herself. Marlis is also an international best-selling author of the book, The One Thing That Changed Everything. She's also the creator of several coaching programs that she teaches in the corporate world, as well as to her private sector clients, programs such as Craft One Life, Career Family Unleashed, Rapid Anger Relief for Moms, Unstoppable Power Couples, Back to Work, and Ignite Your Best Self, which she's launching in 2022. So Marlis has this motto that goes like this: be it before you see it. You see, knowing how to navigate your humanity will help you create a life full of magic, beauty, and abundance, regardless of whether it has been done before. Her background is in life sciences, neuroscience, immunology, and life coaching. And as she likes to say, her heart beats for the science behind our human design and in helping women use this science in an easy and intuitive way to lead themselves. So I mentioned about moms, and she does work with, she has a lot of programs where she works specifically with moms, and you'll get a chance to know where to find that. It's really interesting work. But I must also say, as I think I suggested here, that she also works with leaders and in corporate organizations and this sort of thing. So she's really got a lot going on. And so I'd like to now welcome Dr. Marlis Huebner. Welcome, Marlis, to Grow Yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I know you're coming from us from Frankfurt, Germany, old stomping grounds, by the way, for me when I was in the Air Force in the 80s. But anyways, welcome to Grow Yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is mine. And the topic is going to be extraordinary, talking about emotional leadership, if you will. It's something that you know better than anybody else. Not just the dynamic of it all, but I would submit to you. In fact, I'll just start off asking the question: has, in the wake of this pandemic, has emotional leadership, is it more challenging for people to be able to control their emotions and that sort of thing? I'm curious about that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Right. I mean, you've heard about a lot of people getting divorced, and I don't know how it is for you in the US, but in Germany, there have been lots of reports on like increased violence in households, especially towards kids. And quite frankly, also the numbers of depression has raised
Yes.
among children. And so these days, if you actually are looking to get consultation for your kids, it's like you have to be suicidal to even get an appointment.
What?
Yes, it's super, super crazy because like they're booked out. It's crazy. And I think it is literally because we have never learned how to deal with such a situation that brings up a lot of uncertainty, right? It's the unknown. You don't know. And so if we don't, like, not knowing where this is going to take us. If you kind of think back 2 years ago, I mean, we're kind of getting out of it now, right? But 2 years ago, it was like there was lots of fear,
Yeah.
and a lot of justified fear, obviously, because nobody
Yeah.
knew how long is this going to take, where is it going to take us. And so it's being able to, like, most people don't know how to actually sit in their emotions and just experience the emotions. And so they allow the emotions to take over and control them.
Wow. Boy, I'm going to ask you about that. That's such a great phrase, to learn how to sit in your emotions. I mean, it immediately made sense to me. I'm going to ask you more about that. But listen, before we get started, I would like my audience just to know, who is Marlis Huebner? Tell us a little about, how you, maybe where you were brought up and how you ended up as a esteemed PhD.
Thank you. I think of myself pretty much as an adventurer, to be honest, experiencing, the greatness of that life has to offer. So I live in Germany. I'm a very busy woman who's married to a, dual career partner. So we are both working full-time jobs. We're both scientists. We both have a PhD from Cambridge, and we have 2 kids, a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And it's quite funny when I think back, because I would say, I mean, or you could argue I'm a smart person, at least based on my certificates and everything. And I would say the financial success and the professional success that I've had, yes. But I was like an emotional wreck. So I might have a high IQ, but definitely did not have a high EQ.
Very, very interesting. And there's a lot to be said about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
About, so you were raised in Germany? Is that particularly?
So I'm actually born in Romania. And I lived there until I was about 8. So I do have German roots though. So my mother tongue is not Romanian, but so I moved to Germany when I was 8, and I've had a pretty good life. I grew up, my dad is a doctor, my mom is a nurse. So I would say, I've been growing up with quite a lot of freedom, because Romania is, was very backwards. I grew up, was drinking out of a well, and, the toilet was not in the house. I was very, and so we were like kids that lived on the street, in a good sense. Like, when the church bell rang at 6 p.m., it was like everybody knew, okay, let's go.
Right.
And then I moved to Germany when I was about 8, and I graduated from school in 2000. And then I've been kind of out and about. So I studied biotechnology. That's where I met my now husband, so to speak. And, I would say I've always been like following the protocol. I was really good at school. Yes. I got good grades. Yes. I did it. I made it into Cambridge, which was a huge deal.
I can imagine.
And, I married my college sweetheart. We had the 2 kids. We moved back to Germany. We bought a house. We landed a 6-figure job. So it was like tick, 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 tick. And the crazy thing though, what happened was when I was this is about 7 years ago. So like kind of early in my 30s, after my daughter was born, I it felt like I've been doing what people told me to do. This is my happily ever after. Like, why am I not happy?
Yeah.
And I was not satisfied. And I can literally still hear my mom's voice, just like, why can you never be satisfied? Why can you never be satisfied? And so I thought there's clearly something wrong with me, because I have everything. Like, I have it all, according to the books, I have it all.
Very interesting.
Why am I waking up, hating my life, being angry, and just not liking it, basically? And so that's how I kind of ended up, going, on a very deep inner transformational journey, starting with like mindset work and all that sort of stuff. And I found that was only covering the top layer. And so it eventually took me into really, really looking at emotions. And I peeled emotions and looked at emotions from a scientific perspective, because I am a scientist. I need the data. I need the data,
man.
I need the data. And so, that's how it happened. And then I kind of found my own process. That's why, I like to call it emotional leadership, because I really realized that we have been conditioned to be somebody we're actually not. And I was definitely following the protocol, but wasn't happy. And what I said before, you can be as smart as you want. And it's funny because I read a statistics which says that 50% of the lawyers in the US are actually depressed. They hate their job.
Wow.
And I think in particular, when you are grown up in households like doctors, lawyers, it very often happens that the children step in the parents' toes, basically, or what's that English expression? You know what I mean, right?
Yes.
And
into their footsteps, or whatever. Yeah.
Into their footsteps, yes. And you do it without even thinking about it. Is this really what I want to do? Actually, is this really what accomplishes me? And you get all the money. These people earn a lot of money, but it's not everything.
And so many of us have known this for a long time, and it seems to me that as they say, money won't make you happy, but it's almost as though in 2022, not only have people not learned from that concept, but we continue to strive more for money. I guess I get it, that the allure for everybody is not maybe particularly money, but it's what they believe money will bring. But still, to your point, the money won't do it, or the stuff that money brings won't do it either. It's not much different than money. It's really perhaps going more in the direction that you are talking about here, and that is self-discovery, understanding yourself at a core, learning to be happy and accepting more of the world around. I mean, we could go down that road. So Marlis, emotional leadership, is that, would it be fair to say that you can translate that fairly quickly into saying leading your emotions?
So it's a little bit more actually. Okay. To me, the definition of emotional leadership is about, first of all, understanding your thought feeling patterns and then breaking through to them in order for you to go and really achieve your goals. Basically, it's also really understanding how we're human beings and we don't understand how we work, right? We're super complex constructs. And that's what's has always been fascinating to me. So yes, you have a physical flesh part, but the part we understand, like I can touch this, I can see, I can feel it. But you also consist of thoughts and of feelings or emotion, well, they're not the same thing, but anyway. So let's say you consist of thought and feelings, and we just take them for granted. We think that's just who I am. I've always been like this, right? So I'm not going to change. But we understand very little how actually our thoughts and our feelings influence us. And so most people think, well, that's just who I am. That's how I'm reacting. But that's not how it works, because your brain actually doesn't react. Your brain responds.
Very interesting.
Predicts and constructs a response based on pre-saved patterns. And so once you understand how those patterns work, where they're coming from, you can then go and break them. And so emotional leadership is actually starting to read your emotions and not just go and say, oh, I'm feeling angry, so let's just push it away. I cannot be angry. Let's swallow it down. Let's move on. It doesn't work, because emotions will always find their way out. So it's about then going into that anger and saying, okay, what's this anger trying to tell me? What's this emotion trying to tell me here? And then sitting with it and feeling it fully. And that's so extremely liberating. And to come back to your money point, because I was the same, was like, I need money so I can be free. People want money because they associate freedom. And I had a tremendous coach, which is really she said something, it's like, but you are free. But you know what I wasn't emotionally free, because we feel our emotions, we feel trapped inside of our emotions. And so think about stress, how many stress levels, burnout has gone up like crazy in big corporate companies. And it is because we don't know how to deal with the outside. we don't have the right pre-constructed patterns to give that response that actually keeps us resilient. But the good news is you can train it. You can train it. And so emotional leadership is about understanding those patterns, understanding that you need to fully sit through your emotions, and then flipping that and putting in new patterns that help you to actually get what you want in a way where you lead yourself and you are not being led by others. And we do this all the time. We allow other people to lead us constantly, and we don't even know.
That's very interesting. You know, I think about this even from the standpoint of, you know, a couple of years ago, I had started this program. I called it Get the Edge, and it was really, you know, life skills for teenagers and such. And one of the modules involved the understanding that, you know, sort of teaching teenagers this understanding that no matter who you come in contact with, you know, to some degree, they're influencing you. And to become more and more aware of those, particularly those that you spend time with, and to understand that they are intentionally or unintentionally shaping the way that you feel, the way that you think, the way that you be, and therefore be more conscientious of who you allow to influence you, you see? And so would you then say that this, you know, this is sort of a premise of emotional leadership, is that sort of to your point, that as we grow up, we simply, because we know less, you know, the younger we are, the less we know, and the more we simply just adapt to what we're seeing and experiencing, correct? And eventually end up as adults who, you know, are sane or insane, somewhere in between.
Broken humans,
yes, broken humans.
Lots of holes that need filling. So my son is 12, right? And they're in this age where bullying starts, and it's very crazy. And so here is one of the principles that I teach my kids. And by the way, my daughter doesn't look very much like a girl. She loves short hair. She loves sports clothes. So she walks around in boys' clothes, and she constantly is being, you know, gets comments like, oh, why is he going to the girls' toilet? And what is he doing in the girls' changing room? And so what I basically teach my kids is like, look, life is not fair. You will always have people that are going to be mean to you. You will always meet people that don't want your best, or that, you know, want to bully you or whatever. And so what I teach them, and is basically, it only means something about you if you make it mean something about you.
Interesting. Yes.
And so what I tell them is like, so what do you know? So even if they fight, and, you know, her brother my son would go to my sister, who's like, oh, you're so stupid, you know, like how they do that and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you know about you? Are you stupid? And then she's like, no, I'm not stupid. I'm like, yes, what are you? I'm smart. I'm da-da-da. And it's like, yes, that's it. And so you can allow people to say whatever they want about you. If you don't make that your story, if you don't believe that, it doesn't matter. It's not going to impact you. But I get it. It's not easy. It's not an easy concept, because we don't believe in ourselves. And this is, again, also related to emotions, because think about it. When your child doesn't listen, or, you know, when you were a child and you didn't follow the orders, or you threw a tantrum, it's like, go to your room, come back when you're normal. And so we as adults we think we judge the behavior of the emotion, but really, we do it in a way that we judge the individual. And so that leaves all these holes.
Oh, I see. Like, you know, why are you being so weak? So that would be,
why are you being
judging
so weak? Yes. And so what we need to understand, and where we need to really retrain our understanding of emotions are neutral. Their emotions at its core are basically, there's basically two things, right? They are, first of all, they're nothing else than energy. Their energy and motion. So what I like to say is, and there's, I don't know if you've seen these frequency charts. There's like different emotions have different frequency levels. You can actually
I haven't seen the chart, but I'm aware of what you're saying. Yes.
Right. And so the way to look at it is, if an emotion comes, it's an energy. that needs to complete its cycle. So I always say, if it's an energy mode, it's a cycle. So let's say, I don't know, your wife said something to you and it makes you really sad. And so you start the sadness cycle and you go a little bit and then you instantly go like, Kevin, don't be sad. Like, it's not worth it. Let's not be sad. Like, there's no point. Let's move on. She didn't mean it. So what you do is you cut off that cycle. And then you never complete the cycle. And so that's what I mean by sitting in that cycle. And so instead of allowing yourself to be really sad because it's so painful, right? Because you were not allowed to be sad as a child and fully express your sadness, you cut off the cycle and that energy gets stuck in your side of your body. And it's going to find its way out. And then it's going to find its way out in a very immature way. When the next time your wife comes and says something, your inner child is going to show up in you and going to talk to her. Like the 5-year-old inside of you is actually going to respond instead of the adult you. Now, the other thing that emotions are, they are chemical messengers. They are produced in the midbrain, in the mid part of our brain, which is, by the way, the part that doesn't understand language, you know? And so that's why we're like, we try to talk ourselves out of an emotion, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Very interesting. That's
it's hilarious. So
yeah,
your limbic system, you know, not the prefrontal cortex one, the one that tries to, you know, the language and does all the system one type, like the logical thinking. It's the mid part brain that releases these neuropeptides, and these neuropeptides pretty much then determine what you're like. They're triggering lots of, you know, cell reactions inside of your body, and they're triggering how you're going to feel. And so it's about understanding that.
Yeah. Is this cortisol and those sorts of things?
Yeah. For example, cortisol would be like the molecule of stress. Right, yes. The molecule. So Candace Pert, she was a scientist back in the 70s, 80s, I think. She's unfortunately not with us anymore, but she was the first one to actually study molecule. Like she coined the term molecules of emotions, because, you know, emotions are not a field in the science area. It's very much more like in the psychological area, but any kind of hormones and all that stuff. Yeah. Dopamine, you know, is a molecule of emotion, like all serotonin. Oxytocin is the molecule of love, connection.
Love.
Yeah.
You know, this makes me think about the following, that, you know, emotions, because of what you just said about how we try to, you know, shut our emotions down or control them. There's different ways that I think we can think about them, but I want to ask you, you know, emotions are there for a reason, aren't they? I mean, it's not, I'm a believer in God, and so I don't believe that, you know, the emotions just sort of are just there, you know, sort of by accident, or that, you know, so for instance, you know, we, and particularly my wife, experienced a lot of grief in 2021. You know, her mother and her brother died, and even with those emotions, I could see, and it took her and I, you know, talking about it, that she didn't, and she may not appreciate me talking about this now, but she'd probably be okay with it. You know, that she didn't want to feel this way. She didn't want to feel this level of sadness. And particularly about her mother, she said, I want to feel good about my mother, you know, and we had conversations about this. I mean, and she's a very smart lady, my wife is. And so we were talking this out, and I expressed to her, well, we actually just talked about it, that, you know, grief is you could say it's an expression of sadness, but it's really, you could also say it's an expression of love, right?
Yeah. It's way deeper than sadness, way stronger. More intense.
Very interesting. So, you know, because if you didn't care about the person that passed, you wouldn't grieve. So there's there's a correlation there, right? The more you love, the deeper you're going to grieve. I mean, so I guess my point is I can't imagine not grieving somebody that I loved. And therefore, if we talk about anger, then there's a reason for anger. It's just a matter of what? Not controlling it, though. See, I wanted to say controlling it. managing it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I know, because that's what we do. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like, and even I use it, like,
Yeah.
because it's just it's so common to us. So, at the very core, I mean, if you think about it, what have, like, a human has been designed to survive. Your
Yeah.
brain is here to survive. Period.
Yes.
That's it. Your brain is not here to keep you happy and joyous and all that. Like, it could
Right.
care less, right?
Yes.
It's
That's a
like,
good point.
make
Yeah.
sure I eat, make sure I
Yeah.
sleep,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
survive. And
Yeah.
then so
And fight the dinosaur or whatever. Yeah.
fight the dinosaur. And so a lot of the, it's a lot of it is protection, and anger in itself is kind of a mechanism of protection,
Mm,
right? I mean,
I
anger is
see.
just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Every time, like, anger you can clear very fast. So the moms that I work with, for example, 2 weeks, you've cleared, like, you literally, they do not get triggered anigore. The same thing can
No
happen that happened
kidding.
2 weeks ago, and they don't get triggered anymore. And that's what we want to do, because we're not, the triggers are not logical and rational. And so the patterns that have been implanted in their brain that then triggers the anger is because there's so much underneath. There's so much underneath, right? And very often it's grief, because they did not allow to grieve themselves. And very often it's sadness, impatience, all sorts of things, anxiety. And so grief, for example, doesn't always have to be over, like, somebody you lost. Like, literally, it might be just that grieving over the mother you never had,
Yeah.
grieving
Oh.
over the
Oof.
emotional support you never got when you were a child.
Oh,
When you
wow.
maybe, when you fell down and you hurt your knee, and maybe you had a parent who was like, come on, it's not a big deal, pull yourself together. It's the tiny things. That's why at the end of the day, we all have trauma. We
Yeah.
think always of trauma as a big thing, but it's the little subtle things that are actually adding up and making these things work. And so, to come back to your question, like, what's the purpose? I honestly believe we as humans are here to feel it all. The human experience is about feeling everything. But as humans, for some reason, we've also conditioned ourselves to only allow ourselves, like, if you think about it, you can't even be too happy, because that's not good either. That's crazy.
Right. No,
Like, if you're too ecstatic, if you're
I
like,
see.
that's,
You're
and
manic.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, what's wrong with it? Like, is she a crazy person?
Yeah.
Like, what's
No,
happening
that's
here,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're also not allowed, like, and then when it comes to the negative, what we deem negative emotions, that's also like, don't be sad, don't be, and so we're kind of conditioning ourselves to be neutral. But that doesn't work. It's boring. Like, if you think about it, that's boring. And so I really, really, truly believe that the human experience is here to, like, experience it all,
Experience it all.
feel it all. And when it's like, seriously, this is the most magical thing. I wish, like, everybody knew this, like, this is secret. If you learn to feel all your feelings, like, your life is going to be so easy. It's so easy, because
That
most
is
of us are so
fascinating.
scared. We're so scared to sit in the grief. We're so scared to sit in the sadness. We're so scared to sit in the fear. But if you understand how your brain works, and by the way, this is another thing, like 99% of the times we think of something in the future that actually never happens. And so what I like to do, for example, if I'm really afraid, this is how I tackle fear. I literally go in and I was like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? And then I sit there, however long it takes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I really sit. I take my body and my mind through the worst case scenario. Let's say you're planning to have a salary increase conversation with your boss. It's a really good example, especially for women, because women, like, don't want to ask for a salary increase. They struggle. So I'm like, okay, so let's go and sit there. Let's sit there. And what's the worst thing that can happen? And then you play that, you take your bodies through feeling the worst thing that can happen. And then you know what happens?
Wow.
That never happens. It never happens. Like, it's all in our heads. It's all in our heads.
Yeah.
And so when you train your mind and your body, by the way, because your body is the one that's scared mainly, because the feelings are stored inside of your body. But do you know the book? I do have it here, actually. The Body Keeps the Score.
No.
Have you read this book?
No.
It's a trauma. So
what's it called again?
It's The Body Keeps the Score.
Wow. Oh, I get that completely. Yes. At
Bessel
least.
van der Kolk. He's I like, don't get me wrong, I might say he's a psychotherapist, and he's actually, he was dealing with trauma from post-veterinarian people and stuff. So anyway, the point is, that's what I meant was like the cycle. Your feelings are stuck inside of your body. It's the body that actually navigates most of the things we're doing, and not
That's
our mind.
fascinating.
Yeah. And so trying to think where I was going with this.
Well, I can't remember my own name half the time, so don't ask me to remember as your host, but listen, no, but I have many questions for you that that are not written down. I mean, you just brought up so many interesting things about, first of all, so this is maybe a slight diversion though, that can you because you talked about experiencing our feelings, that we to experience life. I mean, maybe to your point, I can't imagine sitting, let's say watching, as a matter of fact, I'll bring this up. I saw Earth, Wind and Fire. Where? In Frankfurt, Germany. Thank you very much. I cannot imagine sitting there watching an Earth, Wind and Fire concert and being stoic, just like, they just do this like incredible rendition of a song, and a spaceship comes from the sky, and I'm just going, oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
Right. So the point that I'm trying to bring here is that, if you may not even actually know what love is if you don't understand what, I don't know, the opposite of it, which, I mean, I'm not saying
You don't.
hate.
Exactly. No, that's exactly true. You're 100% right. If you don't know how to be sad, you cannot
know what is happy, what is joy. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Exactly. But we're so afraid, and we're avoiding the sad part, and we all want to be happy, and it doesn't work. And you have to, it's about getting comfortable sitting in the pain of the emotions, which is the most freeing thing you can actually do. And the other thing that happens is it brings so much clarity to you. Like there's so many impacts it has on your level of confidence, on your level of decisiveness, on like the level you show up as a human being, because you don't tend to judge other people. We do this all the time, or we blame other people all the time. It's literally, you understand, you see another human being as, oh, okay, he's having an emotion, let's give it some space to get it out, and then we can move on. And I can tell you, like, especially with kids, and the right brain develops first, right? And that's the emotional, creative brain versus the left one, which is kind of more the logical and analytical brain. Yeah. And so we as parents, we parent with the left side of the brain and talk to a right side of the brain.
That is,
it's like, boom,
that is incredible.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And so I always say, it's like, so what the step we miss, we as parents, we correct and we redirect and we want to fix, but we miss the connection part. So you need to connect, and connect means give the emotion the space to come out, and then you can correct, and then you can redirect. And by the way, this is the same thing at work. It's exactly the same thing. It's a relationship. It's relationship principles. How do I show up as an emotional leader in the relationships? It's like completely changed the way my husband and I argue, for example. It's hilarious. Like we used to have very big fights, and now it's like, it's literally, I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. I know what's happening here, but it's actually me. So let me go and get this out, and then I'll come back.
And it's fair to say, if you're emotional, that in and of itself, to have that rational of a response in your own minds is hard to do anyways, right? Because isn't it true that the higher the emotion, the less that you think?
Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's why we do things and then later on go, I can't believe I did that,
Exactly. And that's why we go and say, you say the craziest things, because emotions run the show. They run the show, whether we like it or not. You might talk to me, oh, I'm a rational decision. No, you're not. Nobody is. That is just not not true.
So,
And so emotions are always the fastest path to your brain. You first have an emotion, then you think. Like, of course, this happens within like crazy milliseconds, but if the emotion, that's what I mean by emotion will express itself immaturely, because then you like just go and you blurt out all the things that you're like, oh my God, why did I just say
very
that?
interesting. Did you say immaturely?
Yeah, that's the immature expression.
So then you could say and prematurely, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that sort of, it makes me think that it's one and the same, that if it's immature, then you so to your point, that if you are, as you say, sitting in your emotions, you can mature the 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 action that comes from there, or the expression of that emotion, by sitting in it, correct? You can
By
make it more
sitting it
mature.
and allowing to release it. So here is what, so I know a lot
Before
of
you
people.
go there, Marlis, I'm
Yeah.
because I'm going to ask you specifically about that. So let's remember about how to do that, how to express yourself, your feelings more maturely, if you will. But I want to go back before we get off this topic about what you were talking about with kids, you know, because I think this is really important also as adults, how we behave. That you said something to the effect of that, you know, children, their right brain develops first, right?
Mhm.
And but then we try to, I guess, operate or parent, or however you want to say that, with the left side. I think most mature adults understand this about children. We've heard it many times, that children's brains, you know, mature, you know, they're at a certain level of maturity at whatever age that they are. And that, for instance, there are certain things they simply can't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just say that, which makes a lot of sense. And I actually reflect on, actually, my sweet Alexandra, you know, she's 24 now, about to turn 24. But I remember, and I've mentioned this before on podcasts, I remember when she was, I'm going to say she was probably somewhere around 5, 6, or 7. And I'm outside doing some kind of work. We're in the backyard. And she loved hanging out with me. And she would sometimes just sit there on a bench. And I remember one time, I don't remember exactly what I was doing. I was working on something with my hands, just standing there. She's sitting on the bench with her legs straddled over the bench. And she had a pair of my pliers, the little sharp, the pointed
Mhm.
pliers. And there was a blade of grass on the bench. And she was just picking up the blade of grass and turning it over and throwing it up in there. And I literally watched her for about 5 minutes. And I remember thinking to myself, this little girl's imagination is just raw. She's just, what is she possibly thinking or doing, taking this and turning it over and throwing it up in the air and dropping it, picking it up again? It was just so fascinating to watch. And I knew this was her imagination, her right brain in action.
And that's how our brain learns, by the way,
Is that right?
right? The brain learns through repetition. So that's
Yes.
why like kids also, like, especially at younger ages, need to watch the same movie over and over again, or read the same book over and over again, right? And you're
No
like, oh my
kidding.
God, I cannot read the
Yeah.
same story.
Right.
Right.
Right. But the
So
point,
like her throwing this, and it's like she was literally learning what's happening. And at the end of the day, it's physics as
she's
well,
learning
right?
physics. That's, no,
It's
you're
learning
exactly right.
physics.
It's fascinating, but she had no rational thought going on there.
No.
She wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to flip this over. She was just letting her feelings and her imagination just take over, which of course we should as kids. The thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was so important to us now, both for parents, because I know I have a lot of parents that watch. In fact, I coach a middle school tennis team. So 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I coach them tennis in the fall. And I get around these middle schoolers a lot. And this becomes very important to me as a coach, but I say to parents as well, understanding what you just said, that kids' right brain is developing, right? Their imagination, I guess more of your emotions come from your right brain necessarily, or
Yep.
no? You know, and whatever, but that whole side, and that the rational side's not happening. So what do we, so my question is, first of all, knowing this is important. I think I'm like, I never thought about that maybe we are too rational, maybe too logical I don't know where the balance is. So, but my question is what do parents do about that? This idea that the right side is developing faster. What do we do about that?
So first of all, you accept it, because I think most parents try, we can't, we have our beautiful children and then we can't wait for them to grow up,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Everyone is and we tend to say things like, you're 7, you should be knowing this, right? And you're 7 and you need to be able to do this. So, but that, again, I mean, that's not helping. So what do you do? One of the very important things is really first, really accept it, that, or how often I hear, I was like, my child did this on purpose. No, it's 3 years old. It cannot do things. It cannot be manipulative. Literally that part of the brain is not developed. It doesn't work.
Doesn't even exist. Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And so the very first thing I say is, honestly, because I want to be super protective of the parents as well, because I was a terrible yelling mom and I really hated myself and I beat the crap out of myself. And I now totally understand, though, that literally what was walking around was a hurt child in a mom costume. And so while we tell parents, yeah, you need to be calm and you need to be this and you need to be that, I understand, and that's, by the way, putting a lot of pressure, because I was like, yes, of course I know I need to be calm. Yeah, but I don't know how. They're triggering the heck out of me. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
And so the first thing is really start working with yourself, because the thing is, we are so disconnected to ourselves that if you're disconnected to yourself, you can try all these things with your kids, but it will be willpower and discipline. And then it's going to be very tough. It's going to work for a short while. But let's say you have done that. So the first step is to really, again, allow yourself to feel all the feelings, because if you haven't learned how to do that, that's when you're going to show up as the corrective, logical parent, which your kids don't understand. But let's say, because this is actually a story that I had. So let me give. So there was a mom who had her girl entered for a dancing competition, and the girl was about 5 years old, and the girl didn't win, although she went in it was all really fluffed up, and it's oh, she's gonna win, and she didn't win. Okay, so what happens? There you have a 5-year-old who's sitting in front of you in tears, crying, totally sad, totally sad. It's devastating. And we as moms, oh my God, we cannot see our children sad. It breaks our hearts.
Yeah.
So what do? Oh, honey, don't be sad. It's okay. Mommy's going to go and buy you some ice cream. Hello, addictions. Hello.
Very interesting.
That's what we do. Then we go and we eat, or we take drugs in the worst case, or we binge watch TV or whatever, all these things. Instead of what we want to do is we want to be sitting with them in their sadness. And we want to, because here's the other thing. If your daughter sits in front of you, this 5-year-old, and your daughter says, I am sad, and you come and no, don't be sad.
Get over it or whatever. Yeah.
Completely. This is what we do. We take a part of their identity away, because we're saying, oh no, you're not right. You're not sad. But you're but I am sad. You're no, don't be sad. Yeah. There's no reason to be sad, Right. And so the reason we can't do it as parents is because we never learned how to do it.
Interesting.
And that's why I always say, you got to learn to sit in your own sadness first, and you got to allow yourself to be sad. And then you can do that for your child as well. And you know what? I tell you, I've done this gazillions of times, and it can be, and kids will also tell you the worst things. It's the moments, other moments, it's I hate you. You're the worst mom in the planet. In the past, I was oh my God, I'm the worst mom in the, what have I done wrong? I've done everything wrong. Oh my God, we need to go to your therapist. Everything is wrong. My child is going to, no, this is literally how painful, if they're mad at you because you said no to something, that's literally how painful it is to them. So you need to give them the space to get over the emotion, because you said, no, we're not going to watch TV, and they hate you for it. That's okay. Allow them to feel that anger. They're allowed to be angry, which you don't have to change your opinion.
That's interesting that you're saying, no, I get what you're saying. Very good.
You just sit with them and you're just I get it. I'm really sorry. I understand, Mom. I understand you really hate me right now. I totally get it. Yeah. And then you're you know what? And then I tell you, it takes 5 minutes, and then it's like they turn over a switch. And so here's the other thing I do. I do not offer them solutions. And I cannot even, like, to me, it's like amazing how it works. You give them 5 minutes to get out of the emotion, which blurs their mind and makes them say things they don't want to say. And so we just have to learn to not take it personal. And then they're like, okay, so, but mommy, what if I could watch TV after like dinner or whatever? You know, they literally go into solutioning themselves.
Interesting.
It's amazing. And that's just a beautiful skill to have, because,
Yes.
we expect our kids to be 18 and be all confident and know what they want, but they don't know what they want. We as adults don't know what we want because I really believe we were not allowed to feel all our emotions, and we're so clocked up. We're so clouded that we're lost.
Very interesting, because so then I would imagine that, I'm sure I did this, you would, the solution that I might come up with, because I wouldn't let them watch television, is you should just go outside. So I'm really making the decision for them, right?
Yeah, don't.
Instead of just letting them sit and through their own anger and let them come up with their own solution.
And that's the like, seriously, it's like a magic pill if you know how to sit through the pain.
Yeah.
And then they will come up and find their own way.
Okay, so now let's move back to that. What was that other topic that I said we were going to come back to?
I can't remember. You've lost me.
Okay, so this is really great. The host and the guest have no idea where they're going with this conversation.
Yeah, there you go.
We can take this I
anywhere.
do. Listen, I know that you coach on this and you teach this sort of thing, but maybe move into this whole idea of the rapid anger relief system. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And, what is that technique?
So it's basically a 3-step process that I have kind of stumbled on and identified as I was going through this myself. And, as I told you, so my real motivation was I was angry myself, and I was dumping my anger on my kids.
Yeah.
And I clearly thought something is wrong with me. I need to go to therapy. I need to go and do anger management. And so that's kind of how I started. And then I did mindset work and all that. And it worked. It worked for a little while, but it was kind of talking myself out. Like, there was still a lot of judgment towards myself. And instead of like accepting, okay, I'm angry, so let's figure out what his anger is trying to tell me, I was judging myself. I was trying to control it and get rid of it, right? And so then eventually I came to, okay, this is not how it works. Like, this is not, as humans now, we're like, I then learned about shadow sides, the sides we don't accept inside of ourselves. So the shadow sides are the sides that you hate about yourself. Like me being an angry person, I don't like being an angry person.
No,
right? So what we do is we squish that side into what they call shadows. So you can't see it, it's in the darkness, but the shadow child is what's running the show. And so that's why the shadow child is like kind of coming out.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so what I then did was like, so the 3-step process is, you start with your triggers. What's triggering me? And it could be as like, my kid is not listening, my child is not cleaning up, my husband is being a jerk, whatever. They're being late in the morning for school, like everyone, like, it's triggering me, like. And trigger in this sense doesn't have to be an anger trigger. Like in the rapid anger release system, we obviously look at triggers that make you angry, but a trigger is anything that evokes an emotional response inside of your body. Could be, again, sadness, anxiety, whatever. So in the rapid anger releases, you start with your trigger. And so they little do like, I call it a trigger tracker. So it's a trigger tracker, a triggering journal. So you have to start journaling about your triggers, because we first start with the conscious triggers. There's a lot of unconscious ones as well, but that's where you need a coach, like even I need a coach because I don't see my own blind spots. Nobody does that. And so once you have identified your trigger, we then use a technique that combines, remember what I said before, like your emotions are created in the mid part of the brain and your thinking is happening in the fore part of the brain. So we then use a technique that combines these two things.
Interesting.
And so with that, we go and clear the underlying emotion by allowing that emotion to complete its cycle. We clear it out. It's literally like you clear it out of your system. And so the more you clear it, you can then go and you have the same trigger and you're like, oh yeah, I can see it's the same thing, but you react completely different. Because that pre-programmed response that you've been running on, that pre-programmed pattern, is basically now has had a chance to like fully express itself in a mature way.
In
And
a
so now you don't
mature,
have the need to do that anymore.
yes, you just made
And so
sense
then
of,
you can show up as, I'm the mom
yeah,
who can hold the space to my children. I am the mom that is always calm, that guides them, that all that stuff. But it's like, you got to get it out of your system first.
yeah.
And then the third step is to really, it's all about nurturing and making sure it's really like, where do you like, who do you want to be? That's what I like, because I always say it's not about what you do. Like, there's so many, like we do so many activities with our children, which is, by the way, which I think we're also doing because we don't want to feel. So we keep ourselves busy, but we do, it's like, you can do the greatest things with your child, but if you're being an angry, annoyed mom all the time, it doesn't matter. So it's about, who do I want to be? And what's that, what's the change that I want to create here, right? And so the principle of that is, be the change you want to see. So, and that's where emotional leadership comes in. How can I lead myself, even though the world around me might be telling me something different? And let me just close off with an example. If you're a working mom who might be even in a professional, like a high profiling career, and you're ambitious and you want to climb up the ladder, but what you're seeing is that FaceTime in the office is what's going to get you the promotion, right? That happens. I mean, things I think now are changing a little bit with Corona, but that's what it used to be definitely before Corona. So the people who work crazy hours, long hours, that's a fundamental belief we have. You need to work long hours and you need to work hard in order to get the promotion. Now, if you run on that pattern, like, you're going to struggle. And so it's about, who do I want to be? How can I lead myself here? And so one of the things that I, for example, did is like, I need to leave the office at 4. Okay. So that means I will start working at 7, because working at 7 works for me, might not work for you, but I will be leaving at 4. And no matter what you do around me, it doesn't matter, but it works for me. And I can tell you, it was very hard to implement that, because we are afraid of the consequences. And that's then where you have to go and sit with your fear. It's like, okay, what am I really afraid of here? They're going to take away the good projects of me. They're not going to consider me a committed employee. They're not going to give me the promotion. Those things never happen. They never happen.
Interesting.
If we give ourselves the permission to be the change we actually want to see.
And, and that's interesting that you're saying, because even that idea right there, and I want to talk about the ego, but we may not go there, but see that example that you just gave right there. So on the one hand, you might have a person who, let's just say, they show up to work from 7 to 4. They work hard, they get their work done, and maybe they're not really even that interested in extra projects, in bigger projects, in bigger promotions, and all these sorts of things. But the fact that they still might fear that, because it becomes, again, it's more of an ego response, that they fear the rejection. But on the other hand, they don't really want that in any event. You see? And so maybe this is, to your point, when you sit in your anger and you think through it, you may rationally say, well, if they don't give me more projects, or if they don't give me things that make me more visible within the organization, that's not who I am in any event. My interests are more out there with my kids or my family, my sport or my hobby, or whatever the case might be. But the ego wants you to not be rejected. I don't know where I'm going. There's a question in there somewhere.
I mean, but that's why, like, the ego often also prevents you from really connecting with your true self. And how many people pursue the carrot, right? And then they get the promotion, and they get the next promotion, and maybe even the next promotion, and they're like, oh my God, I hate my life. Because that's what they never, like, they actually never really wanted that, but they thought that's what they wanted. That's what I meant by the beginning. Like, just think about it. Life success tells you you're successful if you have a certain status, if you have a certain amount of money. And so we think that's what we need. But a lot of people actually don't want that. I'm 100% with you, but they don't know because they're disconnected to themselves. And again, the human experience is about is a feeling experience. And if you don't allow yourself to, maybe admit that, hey, I'm actually super happy where I am and I don't want to get promoted 3 levels higher, it's almost like you lose face maybe in front of your family or, any other kind of fears you have been going on. And that's when you're being led by others and not by yourself.
Wow. Okay. So Marlis, how, and you've kind of talked about it, but I maybe want to ask more specific. And again, I know you coach and teach people on these things, but so I don't want you to completely give away your secret sauce for free here on Grow Yourself. But how, give a tip on how to sit with your emotions.
How to sit with
your own emotions. Let's just say, because we all experience this, and I do too. I experience sometimes a frustration or an anger or even some sort of a resentment that I can't seem to let go of. Let's say somebody grossly offended me in some form or fashion. And I know intellectually that I should just let it go. I could even confess to you, if you were my therapist, that, yeah, I know it's my ego. I want to let it go, but
you're still feeling it.
Yeah, I can't seem to.
Yeah, because emotions are not logical. So that's what I'm like. What you're trying to do is you're trying to talk yourself out of the emotion.
I see.
Right. And so, and again, because that's what you've been conditioned to do, and that's what feels right. And by the way, it's like, if you can't forgive somebody, I mean, the reason we have such a hard time to forgive somebody is just because we want to punish them. Like, that's what we really want to do. Like, and we feel if we forgive them, we're taking away the punishment.
I think that's true. Right. I think that's true.
That is not right. And so, and you have to like kind of go through that. So I can give you two brief things. So one of the things that I say to people is get out of your head and get inside of your body. Right. So we're totally head-driven creatures. And even and that's why people, and you don't even have to meditate, but that's why people have such a hard time. If you like literally sit with you, you're going to be in your head. Like, just if you do it now, close your eyes. Where are you? Where's your awareness? It's probably somewhere here. Like for me right now, it's here because, I'm obviously talking to you. And so then it's about like, if you're really, really angry, go and ask yourself, where does my anger sit? Where is it? Where inside of the body is my anger right now?
Oh, wow. Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's about, because that's where it's being stored. And there's even heat maps of where our emotions are being stored. So anger sits here, for example, right? Happiness is like the whole body, and so on. And so then if you want to go further, there's a technique called EFT, emotional freedom technique. Have you heard it? So that's a really brilliant technique. I use it very different though. Like I use the same points. So it's tapping.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah.
Right. So it's tapping. And then, but the way it's being taught is, it's very often, that's where I disagree. It's very often, even though I feel angry, I completely and deeply love myself. And I'm like, no, I'm angry.
I hate myself and I hate you and I hate everybody else around me. Don't tell me I love myself.
Exactly. So I do it very differently. And I literally say all the things that if I don't say them privately during tapping, I guarantee you, I will either dump them on my husband or I will dump them on my kids. They will find their way out. They will find their way out. So this is a private thing you do. These are not the pretty moments, but oh my God.
Yeah, probably don't do this in the subway, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. So what we do is, like for my clients, I have all pre-recorded scripts where we guide them, like audio scripts, and they just say, the words that we teach them to say, because there's a certain pattern of how to say the things and what to say, basically.
Yeah. So
those are just two quick ones. Breathing works as well, obviously.
Breathing, yes. Is that what you said? Breathing?
Breathing is what most people will teach you. You know, they will say if you're angry, count up to 10 or count from 10 backwards.
Yeah.
And I've tried that, but I can tell you, I mean, have you really met an angry person? I mean, when you're in the heat of the moment, you
Yeah.
are just going to be angry. And so that's why you want to do these techniques as preventative techniques.
Right. Yes. And that is the key, isn't it? Is learning how to, you know, not get triggered, you know, not let
Exactly.
not get to the point where, because to your point, once the emotion is taken over, you know, I call it hijacking your thoughts. You know, you have your thoughts coming and your emotion grabs it. Once it grabs it, it's going to go in its own direction for the most part, depending on, I guess, the type of person. There are some people who just just completely lose it. I mean, this is the whole road rage thing. And then there's others who maybe just completely suppress it. But to your point, you know, it's pay me now or pay me later. Somebody it's gonna get that's very, very, very interesting. I did want to ask you this thing about your thoughts about the following, because I've thought a lot about this idea of what you said about when you don't forgive people, oftentimes because you believe that there's a punishment to be had, and forgiving them is taking away the punishment. And I mean, I agree with that. I hadn't really thought about it in that sense, but it really does make sense. But here's the way that I've rationalized it, and that you know, but I think it's a fair point to bring up. I also believe in justice. You see, so whereas somebody has done something egregiously wrong, and I'm not talking about a crime, maybe to me or others have experienced, I sometimes say to myself, I don't forgive because I believe in justice. I feel like this person has unjustly treated me a certain way, and they need to come forth with take responsibility for it. You see, but I don't know, you know, Dr. Huebner, am I just rationalizing this, or is there some fair thought about this?
It's absolutely normal and fine to ask for justice.
Yeah.
However, what it's not solving for you is your own suffering about not forgiving.
Oh.
So,
yes.
And this is what, at the end of the day, you're punishing yourself.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So it's not an either or. For me, it's an and. You can ask for the justice, but if your justice depends on an action the other person needs to do and you expect them to do it, then your justice comes from a place of wounding.
I see.
And you're going to set up yourself for failure because you have zero control over the other person.
That's true.
Right. Let's say it's as simple as, like, justice to you would look like, I need the person to apologize. Okay.
Right. Yes. I think that's probably the most common, you see.
Right. Yeah. So I want this other person to apologize. So, but what if the person just doesn't apologize?
Yeah.
You have no control to get them to apologize.
Yeah.
So you can claim that justice, and I do think you're absolutely right to claim that. But you also have an expectation, because what you're doing in that moment is you need the other person to fix your own pain. And it doesn't work that way. So what you want to do first is actually you go and fix your own pain about, like, how terrible this person is. And and that's what you do. Like, that's what I would do in the tapping. I would go and it's like, they need to be punished, and I need them. Like, that's where you can say all the things you want to say. And then it's about, what are your principles? How do you want to show up for yourself? What are my own standards I'm holding myself to? And then I would actually go and have a conversation with that person. And I would go and I would literally say, you know what? I am extremely disappointed. I'm like, you show up vulnerable. You show up vulnerable. And when you do that, I guarantee you the person is going to apologize.
Yeah, that's
because when you show up on a place of vulnerable, you're actually showing up from a place of strength and not from a place of wounding.
Yeah, I think that's hard for a lot of people to grasp, because, and I'll just say it this way, you know, I think men are worse about this, because I don't, you know, I might want to come to you and say, let's say you're a colleague at work and you have really hurt me by something that you said. Let's say you talked to somebody else behind my back and
Yeah.
said some not so nice things. And let's say that to shape the feeling, let's say that I had a tremendous amount of respect for you. I liked you a lot. I had higher expectations of how you might behave with this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go to you, I don't tell you that you hurt me. I tell you that you pissed me off, or that you were,
Yeah,
or just some other more,
of course.
more ego-based response, as
Yeah.
opposed to saying, Marlis, you literally hurt me. I
Yeah.
mean, you've made me sad. And I think for a lot of people, they don't want to say this. And I mean,
No, because they think it's weak, but it's
it's
not.
weak,
But
correct?
that's the thing. If you go and you talk to them, it's like, you pissed me off. Are you really getting what you want?
Yeah.
And again, and this is, it kind of goes back to the story where it's like talking about bullying teenagers, because in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, you're allowing the other person who went and talked behind your back, to take control over you, over your own feelings and over your own well-being. And so this is what this work will do for you. It will actually emotionally detach you in a way that you understand what that person did has nothing to do with you. I guarantee you it has nothing to do with you. Whatever was going on for them in that moment, and they needed to be mean and an ass and kind of talk behind your back, it has all to do with their own kind of unresolved and unprocessed emotions. And once you understand that, that's extremely liberating, because then you can go back and have a proper conversation. That's where you can go back and say, look,
Yeah.
this actually really hurt. And I would love to understand, where are you coming from?
Wow.
Like, what made you do this? It's very hard to
Wow.
it's very hard to grasp. I get it, and it's very hard
No,
to
I'm getting what you're
explain.
saying, though. No, this is very good.
But it's like, when this can only happen, you can only show up like this when you have cleared out a lot of your own emotional gunk.
This is amazing what you're saying here, because
I tell you, if everybody was like this, we would not be having war on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Marlis, what you're saying, though, if you were to take this at the highest order, at the highest level, this is what, many have taught. Certainly, I think this is partially maybe in the Bible what Jesus was teaching, that if you can get to this place that you're talking about, for instance, let's just push it all the way to the nth degree, that if you were to understand that this was not personal, and that what that person did actually was out of deep, deep pain that they have, you could almost, if you went to the highest level, move to a place of compassion, couldn't you? Even though they damaged you.
And they didn't even know they were doing it out of pain.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. If you go back and you react pissed off, you allow that person to lead yourself.
Yeah.
And this is what emotional leadership teaches you, that no,
wow,
it has nothing to do with you.
Okay, through the course of this conversation, I've learned that we have about 10 more topics. So if you're ready, available for 10 more episodes, then I'm going to put you.
I love talking to you. This has been awesome.
Well, this is very, very good. Because I think I would love to come back and maybe sometime talk about the whole concept of bullying. I think a lot of people struggle with that, and the one thing that I think about bullying is, and I think you've really drawn this distinction, Marlis, throughout this conversation, that there's a balance to be had here. It's not as though you're not saying to get rid of your emotions. You're not saying to just like jump all over your emotions and just fully express them. You're talking about it much. And so I say the same thing about bullying to this point, kind of making this point that on the one hand, there is bullying, and that you have to teach your kids, one, how to deal with that, appropriately when it's really happening, but you also have to teach them about their own emotional awareness, and, to your point, how to grasp that what they're saying or doing does not define them, you see. But but then there's that real thing of them showing up every day to school and getting bullied. And so there's you have to deal with that as well. But so there's kind of two concepts going on there. So on the one hand, you wouldn't just totally just shelter this child to the degree that they can't figure out problems for themselves, right? But on the other hand, so I guess I'm trying to say that
It
I think
depends how far the bullying has come, right? Sometimes you do have to
yes,
step in as the
yes,
parent or like
no,
the
no, absolutely, no. I think that's
the teacher or whatever.
that
Yeah,
that
no.
is that is exactly right. That exactly right. And that's sort of my point, is that there are some things to think about here with respect to that. But I think it is a serious enough problem, continues to be, I guess, that it would be worthy of another conversation. Well, listen, Marlis, before we go here, can you just tell this audience, this beautiful audience, as Russell Brand would say, you 5 million, well, I don't have 5 million followers. I'm sorry. Did I tell you that before we did this? Sorry. Where can people
You
find
gotta
you,
get
Marlis?
there.
Yeah, I'm going to get there. Where can people find you, make contact with you? What's the best way to do that? Please share, and share also a little bit about what programs you have or whatever. I mean, feel free to just let it rip. What do you do, and where can people find you? I mean,
So
yeah,
you
don't be
can
shy.
find me on all the major social media channels like
Yes.
Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And then I do have my homepage is marlishuebner.com. And
Mm-hmm.
so we do actually have quite a few programs. So if if you're into diversity and inclusion for corporate, one of my favorite programs that we're actually just launching is to help big corporations retain their female talents, especially for women that have returned after maternity leave. So that's where we teach a lot of these emotional leadership principles. So they stay in the game without feeling like it's going to be a hustle and a struggle all the time. And then my passion topic is obviously anger, as you might have heard. So we do have a anger relief program for moms or dads and wives, quite frankly, or husbands, doesn't matter. So we teach anger relief principles in parenting, but also in marriage. So you really, really, at the end of the day, can connect better to your children, to your husbands, and hopefully
Incredible.
save your marriage. But hopefully you don't have, you're not at that stage
Yeah.
where you have to go and do that. But if you have to, that's where you can
I think
work with.
that's fantastic. And the fact that you're working with moms, I mean, I won't, it exists all over the United States, but I'd say a fair amount here where I live in the South. And, there's a lot of stay-at-home, moms that, and there's an era going on right now. I think it's been going on now for some time where, I wouldn't say in this area though, but there's still a lot of it going on out there where, stay-at-home moms, they're under a lot more pressure, I think, than many of us understand. And I think I
Yeah.
know that because my wife, although she's continued to maintain a profession as a piano teacher and music teacher, but she chose to stay at home, and she was a serious professional when she did this, and she handled it beautifully. But I think it's still a tough thing to do, to raise especially a lot of kids, and sometimes two kids is really tough. And so I just think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, at least some of your programs specialize helping moms.
Yeah, and let me just quickly build on your pressure, because that's exactly, I think, what was literally killing me, and it is because I don't know what it is about us women, but it's like we feel we have to live up to this pressure. We have to get it done. We have to get it done perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's what's actually fostering a lot of your anger. And that's why we do it. Like, so this is not about blaming moms that they're not doing a great job. It's actually
Absolutely.
helping them realize
Yeah.
that they have been conditioned,
Yeah.
and letting go of that, giving
Yeah.
themselves the permission that they are actually pretty perfect the way they are.
Yeah, boy, that there's no finer note to leave it on than what you just said there. So Marlis, thank you so much for just really a stimulating conversation and just a lot of good ideas that I think uh, this vast audience of mine can take away and really put into practice. And so I wish you would come back and let's do another episode on something. It doesn't matter what. I just enjoy talking to you.
We'll do that.
Okay. Well, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
I
much.
really appreciate you.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really great talking to you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.